All right, so my name is Adenilson Cavalcanti. I'm speaking from California. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. As you can see, such a beautiful day today, as always. So this is znews, a non-CVE and a 22 KLOC patch. Right, so what is zlib? Zlib is a data compression library, implements the deflate compression format, relies on lamp-positive 77 and Huffman encoding. Specifically, Chromium zlib is used everywhere by Coronet, Blank, V8, Angle, Skia, PNG decoding, Android open source project, Node.js, etc. And it's important here to differentiate Chromium zlib versus Canonical zlib. When I say Canonical zlib, I'm talking about the upstream zlib. It's heavily patched, has optimizations for x86 and ARM, and since 2017 was based on zlib 1.2.11. Remember this number. Runs both in a sandboxed context, say inside of Blink, as also in privileged level, say inside of network code. And it's an old code base, still uses kernel in rich C style, dating back from 1995. So why should we care? Well, up to these days, 70% of the compressed web content is still served using gzip format, which generally speaking is going to be implemented by zlib. And the remaining 33%, both on desktop and mobile, is using Brotli. Right. But Brotli is growing steadily. In the last 2 years, it has almost doubled its market share. So maybe in 2 or 3 years, it may hit the 20% market share barrier, which is a good thing. But it's a little bit sad here. If you look on the right side, the red bar is the amount of content that is served with no compression. So we could do better than that, right? All right, so isn't zlib old and crusty? So this chart shows decompression speed versus compression ratio for Brotli, zlib, and zstandard in a Xeon processor. So if you see, Brotli basically compresses better, while decompressing a little bit slower than, say, Canonical zlib. And zstandard, in its default settings, the compression ratio is not as good, but it compresses crazy fast. But that is for Canonical zlib. What about Chromium zlib? So this chart shows decompression speed in a Pixel 3. As you can see, for varying data sizes, on ARM specifically in 32 bits, Chromium zlib was the fastest thing around. I mean, in some cases was more than 2 times faster for decompression than Brotli. Okay, so how Chromium zlib differs from Canonical zlib? Decompression is about 2 times faster, compression about 50% faster, has security fixes, and also benefits from Chromium infrastructure. It's important to remind that the latest zlib, Canonical zlib release has a Kadash Jenkins CRC32 that boosted the compression speed around 40%. So I promised the CVE, here's the CVE. So the description says that before the latest release, zlib could allow memory corruption when inflating, while compressing data, if the input matches are distance enough. And it's interesting to observe that everyone was hit by it. Even some really large companies with dedicated data compression experts and data compression teams. But there is one interesting thing here. Why the CVE is listed as 2018? So it was fixed in the develop branch of Canonical zlib by Mark Adler, who is the maintainer of Canonical zlib, and was first reported by someone called Danilo Ramos. So this is basically zlib in a nutshell. It's a core component of the modern infrastructure, but no one is paying attention to it. Right. so when the issue was first publicized, Tarvis Ormandy, which my understanding is that he's a security researcher working for Google, he bumped into this issue while investigating something else, and he decided to create the CVE. But was Chromium impacted? Well, in 2018, I was looking to the develop branch of Canonical zlib. I noticed this change, and I asked Chris Bloom if he could backport it to Chromium zlib. So the good news are we have been fixed for the nearly 4 years, right? Then everyone else. So yay, Chromium zlib was fixed. Okay, so let's have a look on the release dates of Canonical zlib. So if you notice, between 1.2.8 and 1.2.11, there was a 4 years window. The versions between 9, 10, they were like released in a couple weeks. But between 1.2.11 and 1.2.12, there were almost 5 years. So 5 years of change, that means 62 patches, near 23,000 lines of code. So the sync was coming. But why should we care? I mean, we are already forked from Canonical zlib, right? Well, there are good reasons to do this sync. First, it's important to follow upstream closely. Second, makes easier to port future security fixes. Finally, 1.2.12 features a Kadash Jenkins CRC32, which will help data decompression speed for CPUs without crypto extensions like ARMv7. Finally was the right thing to do, because that may help to uncover some bugs on Canonical zlib. Okay, so how to manage the workload? So they say fortune favors the prepared. So the preparations started in December 2019. First, I added unit tests to ensure great code coverage of our optimizations. And next, I started doing refactors and cleanups, trying to insulate the optimizations from the code that was shared with Canonical zlib. So this is a screenshot of unit test coverage of the decompression optimization. So we are at, let me see, 96%, which is not too shabby. Progress. So from the 62 chains, I identified that we need to backport 42 chains plus 2 fixes from the develop branch. I decided to split the chains in 15 patch sets. So the first patch landed on March 30th, and the last patch landed on April 29th. There was only one revert because it broke compilation for OS X on Apple Silicon, and should be featured on Chrome when M103. One sec. All right, so what is next? There's still optimization work to do. I have some ideas that I would like to explore. It might be the case that we could make it even better, Chromium zlib. Finally, there's still the need for maintenance. As an example, a couple weeks ago, we received a bug report impacting Android, specifically over-the-air updates, because as I mentioned earlier, AOSP has migrated to Chromium zlib, as a matter of fact, in 2020. Finally, help is always welcome. Okay, the unsung heroes. So I would like to say thanks to Chris Bloom. He's an ex-Googler who has retired. And Noel Gordon, he works for Google. He's based in Australia, for reviewing an avalanche of patches. I recall there was one specific patch where new tables were introduced to calculate CRC32 for using Kadash Jenkins. And that patch alone was like almost 9,000 lines of code. Reviewing all those patches requires some hard work, and it wouldn't be possible without the help by you guys. So yeah, thanks Chris and Noel. I would also like to say thanks to Hans Weinborg, because he's always adding some new unit tests whenever a fuzzer finds something new. And we should also remember Jean-Luc Gailey and Mark Adler, who is the Canonical zlib maintainer, because they created and maintained the Canonical zlib for the last 27 years for free. So literally was a gift to the world. And I would like to see more people talking about those guys, you know. And I would like to say thanks to my wife and my daughter. They understood why I was putting so many hours to finish the sync. I mean, there were a few days where I was working like 12 hours. It wasn't funny. And, well, basically, this is it. Let me see. So you guys have any questions? I wonder if we could just like type questions on a chat window or something. It says here, I guess I still have, what, 5 or 10 minutes, give or take? Let me see, Q&A. Oh, there's a Q&A. So let me ask a question. Is this working? Let me see, ask. Okay, I guess it's working, right. And let me see. We have quite a few people here. That's interesting. I wasn't expecting much people to attend this talk, really. So let me see, there's also a chat. I guess the chat's for everyone. Right. So let me see what we could talk about. Yeah. I mean, decompression is complicated because this is already near peak performance, really. The only thing that I imagine we could try to do is to read more data on the decompressor. But we already read data in 64 bits chunks. I'm not sure how much that would help if, say, use a 128 bits queue register. Isn't much of a change. And the instructions, they have some latency. Maybe for AVAX that could help because the registers are bigger, right? For compression, Cloudflare has a zlib fork, and I'm aware they output the Huffman tree using bigger data chunks, but the way they implemented it was really invasive. I would like to try to find a better, cleaner solution, but that should yield at least 20% faster compression, I think. And there is also some research articles about entropy encoding that we could try to source some ideas from them. Okay, so I'm not sure what is the protocol here. I mean, I just keep waiting until the time is over, or I turn it off. Organizational help. Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, if there are no further questions, I think. Oh, there is a question here. Okay. You mentioned a few compression methods currently used in the web, right? What do you think would be trends in the nearest years? You said broadly will likely increase, but zlib going to decline. Whoa, there's a good question. The question from Alexander Dunaev. Hey, I think I recall you. We met before at the Web Engines Hackfest. So I don't think gzip is going away because there are lots and lots of web servers and content out there using it. And even if, say, we look for PNGs, we still have to perform decompression using zlib for open PNGs. I opened a Google web page today, and the doodle was a PNG. What I would expect that some people have the impression they are migrating from gzip to brutally, which may be something good because brutally compresses better. On the other hand, it's a little bit slower on ARM specifically. I am aware that there was an attempt to add this standard as a content encoding option, but I am unfamiliar how much progress was made towards that. So to answer the question, I think deflate and gzip is still here to stay for quite a while, which kind of justify trying to make it faster. I hope I managed to answer your question. All right, any further questions? Nope. Okay, so I guess what am I supposed to do here? I guess I can just like click leave or something else. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave and have myself some espresso. All right, guys, so thanks for your time. Stay safe and peace.